On this episode of the Delighted Customers podcast, I sit down with Greg Melia, CEO of the Customer Experience Professionals Association, to talk about how CX is evolving globally and in the age of AI and in the C-suite. We cover what's next for CX leaders, the new metrics that matter, and how CXPA is shaping the future of our profession. Well, in today's episode of the Delighted Customers podcast, I'm excited to have Greg Melia, who is the CEO of the Customer Experience Professionals Association, and back on the show. Welcome back, Greg.
Great to be here, Mark.
I'm interested in really getting your perspective, and I know a lot of people listening to the show, my audience, are also interested in everything CX. I've guests from all different walks of life and academia, but you're kind of square in the sights of CX and got a front row seat to what's happening in our profession. And I really would like to explore where, sort of from a macro, any micro points, what is the association doing in order to adjust to the ever-changing needs in our profession. And let me just start off by asking you, what do you see as some of the evolving changes and shifts that are happening today in the world of CX?
I love that. The word evolving and adapting, those are critical parts, not only for CX professionals, but for the association and the field as well. I'll give a shout out to Andrew Carruthers, CCXP, recently posted, a few years ago, he posted that CX was in its teenage years, and he recently posted that it's now gone off to college. And so your comment about academia is kind of right. And I think he's correct. We are at a time where the expectations on customer experience have moved from that of a teenager to that of a productive training member of society. So CX professionals are now being called upon to really make sure that they're contributing to the overall business outcomes of the organization. And what's important to recognize is how those business outcomes are measured really is dependent on where you're operating in the world, what industry you're operating in, and the degree of maturity or mindset of the leaders that are involved in that organization. Here in the US, customer experience and the business marketplace is very advanced. Increasingly, customer experience officers are being asked to serve as chief staff officers, are being asked to serve in sort of blended CX sales roles. They're looking at coming across to different market research and data spots, but it's not the old department that sat in one space and surveyed people after the fact. In other parts of the world, introducing CSAT or NPS or metrics and giving customers the chance to share their opinion are new concepts. And so they're just establishing CX roles in CX spaces. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a complicated picture, and I'm glad that we're here to have that conversation.
So one of the things that you share with me is you're seeing an increase in interest at the early adopter stage overseas.
Absolutely. And this isn't just at the corporate level. It's also the governments in Singapore and in the Netherlands and in Saudi Arabia and in Dubai that are all looking at citizen experience and customer experience as a way to really mobilize and differentiate their communities to move forward. And in many of those areas, some of the things that may feel a little bit dated, checking in with people by mobile phone, is actually a very advanced space or technique because that's where their audience is. And so as CX professionals, we're masters at making sure we don't treat every customer the same. We shouldn't treat every CX market the same.
You talked about the difference between mature markets like the US and overseas in terms of CX. What do you see for the CX profession ahead?
Yeah, the CX profession is at an incredible inflection point because on the one side, we are beginning to question some of the foundational metrics and approaches that have been brought forward and asking, is this the right method to use as we continue to move forward? CXPA is very involved in that. We're looking at the research behind these different theories in these different spaces, and we want to be able to help organizations and professionals differentiate between what works and what doesn't. For a long time, it was enough to just share ideas. Now we need to know what is the proof and the data behind it. The second element is that you've got this cast shadow from AI. It is undeniable that AI is going to change the way that customers interact with their organizations, that customers have expectations of their organizations, and that the way that businesses make decisions. Is it okay for the business to use a artificially generated persona, or do they need to have that developed in concert with their customer? I don't think there's a right answer. I think that there needs to be a process for a CX professional and the business to look at the pros and cons of those two different pieces and to figure out what's the projected return on investment and the difference there. So as CX leaders, we need to get just as good at designing using AI as we've been at using traditional customer experience metrics, because it isn't wrong to evolve the way that we move forward. What's wrong is if we lose the voice of the customer and we lose the perspective of the customer in the business making decision.
Yeah, Greg, that's an interesting point, and there's two elements of that point that I have questions about. One of them, and you may have alluded to this already, is the ever-changing role of the CX leader and the shift to start with being a business leader first and then a customer experience leader second. And part of that's influenced by the onset of AI and the inclusion of AI in all things. It's interesting when I think about it and I speak to people who have been guests on the show, let's say in marketing, they're dealing with the same thing. Change management friends dealing with the same thing. Product friends dealing with the same thing. You could almost fill in the blank, a whole bunch of different departments. And so it kind of starts with, we need to have a comfort level in speaking the language and really understanding, especially where we work, what is important. I worked in a bank, so they looked at things like return on average assets, liquidity ratios, loan to debt, loan to deposit ratios. So we're familiar with those things, and then track back to, okay, so clearly the roll-up of our customers are leading to revenues and leading to profits, and so we have to be able to understand how those dots connect. And I guess I'm saying AI is proliferating beyond just CX.
And you're right, everything is at the same transition point. I think AI is a big part of that. I think the second part is that we've just had a fundamental shift. The reality is that most businesses nowadays are governed by that relentless pursuit of profit, and oftentimes that relentless pursuit of profit on quarterly earnings and on annual earnings. We, as customer experience professionals, there was a time when some people thought it was okay to say happy customers will have a return in the long run. And that was sort of we were asking people to make a leap of faith with us. And I think the reality now is people are asking us to show that data. And so, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I was like, do we need a new metric in customer experience? And I said, well, what if we actually just had our metric be customer growth? Do we have more customers, and are they spending more with us? And then our question of satisfaction or loyalty becomes a supporting metric or a guidepost rather than the goal. And so I don't suggest that we don't. I just suggest that we need to have more advanced conversations, because it was never about just creating raving fans. It was about creating sustainable profit that will allow us to serve our customers and our fans. And so we need to be able to do all of those things, and we need to recognize that the business model for a luxury property is different than a business model for a utilitarian budget sensitive market. And so customer experience is about the customer, and it's about the business outcome. Experience is a portion of that.
Yeah, you just reminded me of Jason Barrow, who's the founder of NPS Prism at Bain. And one of the things he talked about was the ability to understand which levers to pull and how far. to your point, is not every customer in every industry needs to have this wow experience. And you and I shared some of the airlines like Spirit, for example, maybe Frontier, who, no one's really expecting a wow. And if they get one, they're going to be a bit curious about what's going on here. Why am I getting all this service? I'm not paying for it. I don't expect anything.
And I don't want to pay for it.
And I certainly don't want my prices to increase because of it, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things underneath the hood of CX that would, we can talk about experience design and metrics and customer expectations, but it is an evolving thing, and that's why I was curious about what is the association doing to align with some of these changes.
Yeah, let me pick up on that specific question about design is
Yeah.
if you almost think about it, we have our 5 competencies, and a good portion of CXPA's history has focused on the reactive measurement after the fact. And so, we have people go through a process and we ask for their feedback. It's expanded to sort of bring in the journey orchestration, where now we're collecting data and making a change. But what is probably a growth opportunity is to focus more on the design from the front end. How can we create a space where an individual doesn't even have to enter that data, but that we've had a way that the system is moving them naturally through the flow and orchestrating this journey or experience for them, which oftentimes is about a smooth and reliable path rather than a wow moment. That's really critical, and that's really where AI can come in and help us in a lot of spaces. We have a great white paper that is coming out on CX Day about leveraging AI and CX, and what it really focuses on is 3 levels. You need to understand how to sort of write prompts and to bring that forward. You really need to then understand how you can build AI into your customer experience design. And then you need to make sure that that CX AI design that you've built fits within your organizational culture and that it is kept and sustained across the organization. I'm sure that all sounded very familiar to you because that's the same thing you did as a human element with CX in a box and with the work that you did with your clients and your employers. But it's empowered by this additional set of data that can crunch data at scale and do routine tasks in a way that we haven't before. So that's a big part. What is this all in service of? The number one thing that CX professionals are looking for is to have respect and support from the C-suite. Yes, they want to have a job, but that job comes because CX is a trusted business discipline. Yes, they want to have a long and sustained career, but that comes from customer experience being that space. So one of our 3 initiatives in service of our 2032 goal is to build the business case for customer experience by collecting the data that shows what happens over time. Not what is the return on investment on this survey, but what is the return on investment for keeping customer focus and customer centricity involved in the business decision making. The second thing that goes with that is that you have to have the trusted professional practices. And that's why we put the CX Book of Knowledge together and why it's available on Amazon now. A little plug there. But the idea is that people should be able to get that college level education at an affordable and accessible way for them to advance their CX programs. The last part of that is that, like every organization, CXPA needed to think about how we organize ourselves and equip ourselves to serve our community. So we went out and we surveyed more than 1,200 stakeholders worldwide, did sort of 3 rounds of that in conversations, and we brought that back so that we've adjusted our brand, we've adjusted our organizational structure, and we've adjusted our technology. So if you go now to cxpaglobal.org, you'll see those 3 things right on our front page: building the business case, getting the professional tools, and earning your certification so that you can have a trusted career path.
I'm curious, Greg. I know you were very involved in the American Society of Association Executives, ASAE,
Yes.
and came from another association as well prior to CXPA. Are other associations having a from your personal experience, having a similar inflection point when it comes to the impact of AI and their associations?
And the good news is we found at the American Society of Association Executives meetings that we're doing a lot of things that are on the leading edge. We've got a CX chatbot that is based solely on our publications that was written by Krishna Dasari, CCXP, and some fellow members. We have been using AI to condense and create a podcast last CX Day, and we're having this conversation and this white paper that will be released. With that said, there is a tremendous amount that we really need to pick up and move to. And it's not about which tool we should be using to analyze survey results. It is about what strategy should we be using to think about how CX leaders compile data, consider data, and integrate that into their journey. It's about how will a customer feel when they're interacting with AI, and what are the ethics around that disclosure and that space for them. And basically the question of just because you can do it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I think there's a lot of cool and interesting spaces there. I think that CXPA is in a solid position on that. And what I'm curious about is how AI might help us better serve our global audience and our growing global audience.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Knowing that the global audience continues to grow. On that note, I'm curious about what's next for CXPA.
Yeah, well, we are sitting just a few days away from CX Day on Tuesday, October 7th. We're excited about that. That is such a great time. I just got an invitation this morning, and so now I know that on CX Day, I'm going to be speaking to audiences in Vietnam and in Lithuania, and I'll look forward to seeing what the next opportunity is as well. CX Day on Tuesday, October 7th, we'll also have the release of that white paper. We have a new course coming out on using customer experience to serve traditionally underrepresented markets. And anytime we can have an educational program that helps CX leaders drive growth in their organization, that's a really important thing to do because it's good for the customer, it's good for the organization, it's good for the employees. We also have some great work that's being done by the research committee that is creating a tool and checklist so that every CX professional can think about these quotes that are floating out there on the internet. Because if you choose a quote that is from a poorly resourced source, you undercut your credibility. What we need to do is we need to give people the right research information to make the right case to the right leader at the right time. And that is a great dovetail into next April, the 27th to the 29th. We'll be in Toronto, Canada. We'll have a pre-conference program that will be a one-day MBA-style boot camp on understanding those terms that you mentioned earlier in the podcast about liquidity and things that people who don't work in banks don't always know, so that you can be a business leader at the table with everyone else. And then the main program is going to really focus on accomplishing three goals. One, introduce people to Canada and the diversity and richness of Canada as a global market. The second is to really focus in on this question around AI. And what do you need to do as a CX professional to make sure that you will be a trusted advisor on your organization's use of AI? And then the third is making sure that we give people practical, proven advice on how to drive business impact. So what are the latest techniques that people are using to unite their organization and drive their organization to better business outcomes through customer experience? Yeah. Those are the things that are most on my mind. I'll note that while the new website is up at cxpaglobal.org, I'll be troubleshooting and adding new content to that, all the way through. And we've got a great new online community as well.
Well, and if I could just affirm and piggyback off that, you said great new platform for sure. As you continue, like any conversion over takes a lot of energy and effort. But I can testify firsthand that the learning management platform is well done. I work closely with Gabe Smith in in coordinating and designing content in a way that's fitting and palatable to people who are either looking for continuing education credits for their CCXP, or they just interested, they're not even members yet. There's always future members. And they want to learn more. Speaking of Trusted Advisor, I did a course around that topic called Becoming a Trusted Guide. So many people have already taken it. But whether it's my course or someone else's, if you're looking for a great resource, it's well constructed, it's designed in a way that's, simple to digest and has quality controls built into it. And if you're going for your certification, it automatically tracks that for you. So another great tool in serving those people in our profession.
Yeah, thank you. And just like Andrew said, CX has gone to college. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't taken a course that involves a quiz or an interactive element in a little while, you are selling yourself short. You're not going to get by just on doing free webinars. You need to raise your game. And the Trusted Advisor course and the other courses at cxeducation.com are great ways to do that.
Excellent. Well, great information. Always love the updates from you, Greg. Exciting the things that you and your team and the board and everybody else are doing to advance our profession. I want to land the plane by asking you one question that I ask all my guests, and you probably didn't know this was coming, but what delights you as a customer?
What delights me as a customer? I'll give you two different things. One, I really like having a inventory that always has something new. So I happen to be a whiskey fan, and so I like being able to go into a whiskey store and see a bottle that I've never seen before, or a restaurant that has a new menu item. So that's the surprising delight for me is keep doing something new for me. But the second thing is I absolutely expect to have a seamless, reliable encounter. And so if it's going to be difficult to order or pay for that special item, I'm out. So make it easy and keep it interesting.
Simple enough. I didn't know that about the whiskey, so
yeah, I may be able to tell you some good shops not too far from your house, Mark.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. Well, on that note, we'll say cheers.
Cheers.
And thanks so much for being on the show, Greg.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you for your leadership, not just on the podcast, but on helping to guide CXPA through a pivotal time when you were on the board of directors. What we're doing today is in part because of your work, and it continues to grow because of your support. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Delighted Customers podcast. It would mean so much if you would take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts, click on the plus sign or follow button, and that will ensure that you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday.